We want to have an organic crop. We want to have something that's high productivity. We want to have something that's insect and disease resistance. You know, we've got to get there, right? And there's a continuum, there's a ladder that has to be implemented in a methodical way for the growers to actually access those upper levels. And so if we're missing a rung or two at the bottom of the ladder, if we're not understanding how soluble carbon is cycling, or if we've got major contamination from heavy metals or something like that, there's going to be some degree of mismatch between our intellectual understanding of what's happening in our field and what the plants are actually going to be capable of. So again, matching methods to your goals, matching your pest management type, matching your crop management input type, right? If you're using Mehlich 3, you're going to maybe use some soluble NPK and carbon, and that'll get you most of the way there. But if you're using, a Morgan, weak acid, water-based, Haney, biological, minimal analysis method, you're really going to need to up your game in terms of managing your natural NPK, carbon-based fertilizers, organic, and so on, and your soil microbes as well. That's going to get you to the next level. If you try to utilize organic and biological analysis methods and then go back to using conventional soluble inputs, they're not going to match well. They're not going to mesh from a management perspective. And so, go back to that part on the continuum, maybe run some trials to try to get yourself over into the new continuum. My personal preference and advice to a lot of the growers that we work with is, know where you're at in terms of your basic production that you need to earn your dollars, to keep your farm viable and healthy in economics, feed your family, and so on. And then maybe put one or two trial blocks, per season or whatever's, feasible from a management perspective into trial using some of these softer chemistries and softer approaches that may yield benefits, but they may provide a little bit more, they may have a little bit more risk associated with them. So, but again, it's really about matching. From over the years, I've seen more problems where growers, they're not matched up, right? And so their mind is thinking they're getting one thing from their soils because of chemical analysis, but then they're applying a biological and hoping that that's going to feed their crop sufficiently, and it's just not in a lot of cases. And so you have to really ramp up the technical capability and the technical understanding on the farm in order to match and receive the best results. So when you had your old paradigms versus the new paradigms, right? And 2020 and beyond, really, again, there is this new paradigm that's accessible now. It's consistently repeatable for growers that are serious, that have that are willing to invest, mostly from an intellectual and time management, in some cases slightly budgetary perspective. Your soil mineral assessment, your carbon storage and release, your microbiological management, and your allelopathy and biocontrols, right? You're continually applying different materials than you were years ago because the game has changed, the goals are different, the analysis methods are different, there's more options, and you're getting better plant response with lower dollar values in the new paradigm. Versus, years ago when everything was going to be solved by hybrid genetics, and then it was all going to be solved by GMOs, and then it was all going to be solved by insecticides and fungicides and herbicides. If it was solved by now, it would have been. And in a lot of cases, they did solve problems that way. And it was great, right? But now where we want to go as a species, where we need to go as a species, is we need to get more in tune with how nature wants to grow. We need to understand how to do that on a commercial scale in a variety of crop management systems, and how to unpack these concepts technically through management, through your operations, through your personnel. We see in certain situations where growers have high degrees of soil microbiology, very minimal weed pressure, very minimal need for biologicals, input-based biologicals, and very minimal need for just overall chemistry. In growers that have raised their organic matter and have really committed to carbon shifting the carbon content of their growing environment to a 8+% in organic matter on the whole, you can achieve those levels. There's also ways that you can achieve those levels in the short term through technical inputs, specifically in irrigated crops. There's also ways that we're looking at and working with where in a variety of manners where you're using some irrigation of chemical, biological, and physically weathered rocks into the soil environment, as well as foliar sprays. So there's nuances approach that are completely soil dependent both on soil and plant, or ideally you have a situation where you have a variety of different input types that are all working synergistically. When you look at a fully hydroponic environment, or if you just wanted to grow on the moon or on Mars or somewhere like that, and you look at the hydroponic or aquaponic type methods that have if you look at the aquaponic versus hydroponic, where your soluble nutrients and then versus soluble animal inputs, there's a huge difference in terms of how those two systems are managed. And ultimately, that's one is really emulating nature. One is saying we need to be involved at every step of the way. Full environmental controls. Neither are good nor bad. They're just different places on the continuum, and they all have their place within crop production in the 21st century, in my opinion. So if you want to do full analysis and we really want to understand our soil as a resource and how to invest, it's really important to match your goals, to look at your long-term mineral balancing, identify the total resources, look at a seasonal soil enrichment in the spring every year if you're in an annual crop, or even if you're in a perennial crop. Any sort of seasonal crop replenishment in the fall, and then micro fluctuations during the season. Year over year, it's important to use the same soil analysis method at the same time of year. We have different methods that we advise on our website for different times during the growing season, because they actually correspond to different mineral pools that your plant might access. For instance, when we do bulk mineral applications in the fall of soft rock phosphate or humates or lime or gypsum or some other input mineral, we'll see the plant is the soil is actually being built from to build one mineral pool, right? If we're adding soluble minerals in season, that's a completely opposite mineral pool. If we're adding a seasonal nutrient replenishment at the beginning of the season, that's a different pool. Or if we're doing a total long-term 5-year plan for soil health building, that's yet another pool. And each one of these starts to make sense when you see them in light of how the soil analysis methods are actually advising you which pools you're able to access. Carbon is king. Thanks again very much, and look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care.